Our next speaker is Joel Cartwright, Industry Principal at Vistex. Joel, take it away.
Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Joel Cartwright, as John mentioned. I've been in the consumer packaged good business about 25 plus years, mostly starting out on the manufacturing side in finance and accounting role, sales operations, companies like Stereo Lee Foods, Sunny Delight Beverage, and Kimberly-Clark. The last 15 years, I've been on the software side, specifically trade promotion management tools and optimization software, managing for consumer packaged goods in multiple roles, implementations, support solution engineers, and product management. And one of the things the general will talk about today is really the digitalization. Digitalization right now is it's not a very exciting term, but it is a hot topic in the industry right now. And digitalization is a broad term that really falls under the canopy of revenue growth management. There are still aspects, and I still talk to manufacturers today who are still doing components of trade promotion management, optimization in Excel. And always my question back to them is, how can you do that in today's environment, in today's digital age? So through the through the presentation, we'll talk about the kind of how this transformation has started, kind of the industry trends that we're seeing, and where are the digitalization components essentially and the opportunities. Because the idea is to evaluate these areas and say, hey, do I have the opportunity to do some digitalization makeover, as I like to call it, within my organization. So essentially how digitalization really started, let's first define it. Really, it's the automation of previously manual tasks. You could also be, others were seeking to replace older technology with newer, updating systems, or a combination of both. And when I talk about older software, it's not necessarily out of date, but it's really this Excel. Many times I'm talking to customers who are still utilizing Excel or some sort of homegrown application that is not completely digitalizing the overall process. But what it does, it adds efficiency and essentially reduces manual operations, providing our manufacturers to be more strategic, eliminate errors, and so forth. And that's really the gain from a revenue growth management perspective, is to eliminate errors, but more importantly, be more strategic. I'm not doing a lot of manual intervention. I can now analyze data that's updating in real time. So, how it really started is about the lean transformation. Of course, lean transformation is a methodology that centers around a value stream and integrating an entire ecosystem. So when you think about trade promotion management, a lot of this, the planning component may be still done in Excel, some of the transaction components, there are bits and pieces that may still be done, as I like to say, offline. And the expectation of a lean transformation is getting that entire ecosystem from the planning process all the way through the supply chain, throughout the organization, into a digitalized area, giving suppliers and all the way through customers the ability to see everything in more of a real-time component. That's all started, of course, around the lean philosophy, the concept of the Kaizen, or continuous improvement, to eliminate waste and to continue the value delivery process. So it started, the benefits was really how it started to evolve. Lean transformation, in my experience in reading the manufacturers, the benefits reached their limits, particularly from a supply chain standpoint, from an accounting standpoint. There's areas that I can't do much more to as a manufacturer. But what's happened in the top of that, digital technologies have gained the reputation and the recognition and the ability to transform a company's performance. And so what companies have realized, and companies I work with, that putting the lean and the digital together can simplify these processes and allow companies to apply the most effective levers to go down that digital transformation. So, and as I mentioned before, it's a hot topic in the industry right now. And a recent survey by an industry group, what these folks in the manufacturer are saying is, I need to create some sort of a digital budget. I need to have a dedicated digital project team. And they look at it from a readiness. Only 48% of these surveys say they're ready. Only 22% saying that they're ready. You have a dedicated digital project team. They need to create the team that's dedicated to just analysis. Only 24% of consumer products folks have a team that have dedicated to this type of analysis, digitalized. And a large percentage do understand that there is a potential impact and an ROI for the digital enablement. So, but they need the evaluation capabilities. And 45% feel the quality of the organizational data, particularly harmonized, is rated just average. So a lot of opportunities within an organization based upon, am I the only person out there? No. A lot of opportunities and a lot of organizations are looking for this transformation. And potentially being, the transformation could be a complete journey or just a gap fill. So really looking at this survey, the key findings is the top priority is digitalization is really needed to drive revenue growth management. 72%, as we mentioned, adding tools or analytical capabilities to support the new RGM process is their top priority. 66% are advancing to these practices, and they're saying, I really need to do deeper dive into the optimization, optimized promotion and pricing. The presentation before really drives that home on the capabilities. Now, what the manufacturer is saying, the top obstacle is they just have poor quality of data, as well as the data cleanliness and management needs to be improved within their organization. So really, they understand the digitalization component, they understand the obstacles, and manufacturers are real trying to get started. So, in addition to that, what we want to focus on here, let's take it down to the kind of the next level, specific to the trade space and so forth, and the typical pain points that we're seeing. What I hear all the time when I hear someone who's not gone down that digital pathway yet. They're still doing Excel. They have really no clear vision for the overall plan. They're still doing top-down, bottom-up planning in multiple Excel spreadsheets. These spreadsheets, they don't align. They're not updated in real time. So how can I make this? And what I need, and this just resonates constantly throughout conversations I have with current clients and opportunities, I just need one plan in one place. Effectively, too, the pain points are joint business planning. A big component of discussion is how can I be more collaborative with my retailer, my customers, and so forth. The Excel just doesn't give that cohesiveness across these organizations. There's a huge breakdown in the settlement component, as far as the rebates, the charges, the deductions, that whole claims processing. Not actualizing. It's still being managed in Excel. But when I talk to manufacturers, they're managing Excel, but they haven't come to the conclusion my business is just not growing, or it's growing beyond the point where, I really need to automate this. Are customers taking advantage of me for it? So those are the typical pain points that we're seeing within the group. Now, digitalization comes in two forms. It's the TPM and the optimization. Now, it's going to be pretty hard to do optimization without some sort of digital component. The modeling and the AI machine learning is not going to really allow that. But what we want to focus on here is from an evaluation standpoint. As a manufacturer, I need to be able to go through the key areas within my trade planning, trade optimization piece and see, is there still opportunities? Are there opportunities where I can digitalize this process, the top-down, bottom-up planning? Is that integrated? Is it ongoing? Customer planning. Understanding those customer products, list price, and COGS, all that information, is that coming into in real time, not still being managed in Excel. And then overlaying that optimization piece. I can say I certainly can't do any sort of optimization in Excel when I'm doing my incremental volume planning and so forth. But more importantly, from an execution standpoint, Excel doesn't provide me the workflow, the spending controls, and profitability controls. From an accrual standpoint, from a transactional standpoint, the accruals adjustments, the volume actualization, the spend exposure. When customers are looking at this area, specifically transactions and the actualization of all this information, and they're still doing it in Excel, there's a huge aha moment from, this is how much money I'm booking, and it's just kind of a very arbitrary number. And I'm leaving either money on the table or I'm leaving sales on the table because I'm not getting that that digital component where everything is updating in real time. So there's a huge aha moment there that's driving, spend liability as well, the deduction processing, which helps me do more post-event analysis, capturing the spend, and the validation component as well, automating those processes. And ultimately, by having all this information digitalized, I'm able to do better evaluation of what are the risks and gaps to plan. And if certainly the post-event analytics is difficult to do in just an Excel spreadsheet. By the time the information is updated, it is stale. I can't really act upon it. So if you're looking at your industry or organization from an evaluation standpoint, these are the areas you want to take a look at individually and say, am I still doing this in Excel? Am I still doing some sort of a manual process? Is there an opportunity for me to digitalize this process? And kind of looking at it individually, again, evaluating the pain points, it's, kind of going down deeper into that if I'm still doing Excel, is visibility to plan and promotions at particular levels within the hierarchy. That's why they may be saying, I still got to maybe work in Excel. Big challenge I have is aligning those direct customers with my accrual sets to my indirect customer plan. And this whole, working this in Excel is a really difficult pain. It's very time consuming, it's very error prone. I have the MOAS there. In my days back and before a lot of spreadsheets, when I was in the industry, I had my Excel spreadsheet, I call it the MOAS. It's the mother of all spreadsheets. And there's this monster Excel file during the annual planning process that we're constantly breaking down, that we're constantly disconnecting. Who's got the latest version, or you broke this formula, which created this huge, huge time delay or inability for us to do strategic planning, and because we're still doing it in Excel. Now, the negative outcome that all these are driving is just, again, it gives me limited visibility to the spend effectiveness. And it's, as I mentioned before, there's no real ability to identify risks and gaps to plan. And customer volume and spending is all that planned data and volume is not being captured and updating the liabilities, updating the forecast. And of course, you can throw post-event and pre-event analytics out the window. Of course, these are things that help you identify that spend efficiencies and spend inefficiencies. So the true negative outcome, as you can see that from a digitalization component, is still these aspects. If I can correct the negative outcomes, are ultimately going to drive revenue growth management. So additional areas too, from a budget and objective planning, I talk about having this kind of ability to see one plan in one place. When I'm doing my annual planning process, I need to be in that planning meeting where my S&OP and my budgets are sitting, and I can effectively make strategic decisions dynamically because my forecast is being updated if I need to do quarterly corrections, something like that. But I really can't do an effective plan comparison if I'm still using the Excel spreadsheet. So the opportunity here from an HQ planning is by digitalizing, putting this into a software component or some way, digitalizing this process makes this much more strategic and more dynamic. As I mentioned too, the customer planning, a lot of customers saying, I have the plan because I needed to be able to roll that up, and maybe Excel is the only way to do that. Well, the flexibility of technology allows for a cross-category roll-up by customer now. So the ability to get some sort of a customer plan volume spend aggregation, aligning up to multiple brands, multiple products, and so forth, by having that digitalization component, I can see those risks and gaps. I can see where, from a contribution standpoint, from a spend effectiveness standpoint, I can fix those gaps to close volume or potential risks to lose category share. And I certainly can't do that if I'm still working in Excel. The execution component, one of the big things a lot of folks are not getting is not only execution but the workflow. There's the planning piece in Excel, but there's that workflow, and the approval process. It's easier to prevent inefficient spending. It's easier to prevent overspending. If I have some sort of visibility during the planning process and the execution process where I can see spending and profit guardrails that alerts to our account managers who are working remotely in the field, who are working to maybe potentially manage multiple brokers, and are not able to manage or to see those profit and spending guardrails. They're not able to manage it. So they're still relying on emails and forms. Hey, I need this request for incremental volume. No, that needs to be more of an automated process, one. Two, it needs to show how that incremental expense to get a new point of distribution or initial new product into distribution, A, impacts my overall plan, or B, potentially could impact my category. So I need to understand this. So it starts with automating and digitalizing the workflow. So as I mentioned before, it's always the time-consuming and aligning the plans to the actual data. The pain points, real-time updates. This is not updating in real time. Scattered management of promotional calendars and one-off documentations around. There's really no standard post-event analysis, no central hub, no automated matching of these promos to actuals and promotion performance spend liability. And these are all negative outcomes. Without vision, without this, I'm not seeing the efficient spending. I'm not deploying the correct tactics. I don't see a central hub for information where I can see, where's my overspends, where's my underspend, what customers are taking advantage of me. So again, negative outcomes, all of which, when corrected, drive revenue growth management. We talk about promotion planning from a planning standpoint. As I mentioned, it's time-consuming, Excel spreadsheets. This doesn't allow me to be strategic. How can I be strategic when I'm just working Excel, especially when I'm charged with maintaining category share or trying to get a new item into distribution and so forth? So I need to see from a software digitalization component, which will allow me to be more strategic. And then, as I mentioned too, is the actualization component. I've got forecast. I need to react when a forecast is updated with the actuals. I need to be able to see in real time that what's the impact downstream to the plan. Because I'm going in tomorrow to meet with my buyer on my 2 for $5 promotion. It didn't work. It wasn't effective. I need to have that quickly addressed. Or if it was ineffective, I need to maybe go a deeper discount or something like that to close any risk or gap that's come up. And then understanding that accrual accuracy and spend liability performance analysis. And I want to talk a little bit about accrual accuracy. I've mentioned it before. For manufacturers, this has kind of been an arbitrary component, hey, accruals and so forth. But if you take a step forward and say, if I'm booking the accurate accrual on my general ledger, and I'm not booking an arbitrary number, how much more profitable my investment will be from a financial standpoint. So if I'm booking the accurate number, I'm not leaving any money on the table. Money if I'm over accruing, or worse, I'm under accruing. But if I'm over accruing on my spending, that's money that could be utilized to drive sales and incremental volume. The settlement process, we've talked about this. I talked about this and touched on this before. Managing that in Excel, it's a difficult component. There are capabilities out there today. I know certainly we offer from an automation of this validation and reconciliation process, and updating the spend liability to prevent overspending, to prevent invalid spending, and so forth. And then managing the coinciding audit backup in detail. And these, ultimately, it's the understanding is, are these settlements valid that the customers are claiming? Is my accrual accurate from a spend liability standpoint? Are customers taking advantage of me? Again, these are all elements that drive revenue growth management. They're kind of simple things if you think about it, from just simply automating this process. So again, these are the areas when evaluating and say, is there an opportunity to digitalize this component? Is there a gap fill software, something like that out there to eliminate something in Excel? These are the idea and aspects that will help drive, again, the revenue growth management. And of course, the analytics piece. It's kind of a whipping the dead horse type of thing, but multiple data sources reported. There's all manually needing updating. There's multiple reports out there. So by digitalizing this and eliminating multiple Excel spreadsheets, I can now add the component of data science for optimization, to really truly do analytics. But more importantly, it's getting everyone within the organization from a reporting standpoint looking at the same information, the same KPIs, to ensure that everyone is delivering against the overall, if there is a revenue growth management goal, which there should be. This allows for that capability from an organization standpoint. These are opportunity areas. We've talked about this for each area. The opportunities we want to look at, are there areas that become or can become digitalized? Is there process improvements that can be done with future digitalization? And when you're evaluating this, the key aspect is there a revenue margin impact by doing so? And more than likely, you're going to find it is. Digitalization offers either, the way you want to think about this, and I always tell folks, when you're evaluating these areas from a digitalization standpoint, yeah, there is a revenue margin impact, but it may not be completely monetary. You want to look at this from a quantitative or qualitative positive outcome. So meaning if I can probably see a net revenue increase or something, a margin impact, but is there a quality improvement? Am I reducing time? Say it used to take me, 40, 50, 80 hours to do annual planning or customer build and so forth. If I can cut that in half, reduce that time, that other half of the time that I normally would spend, I can be more strategic. And then by evaluating this digital process improvement component, there's also takes on the form of, is there a business process improvement? So it's evaluating not only your digital or your capabilities, but is there efficiencies available in an overall business process? And this, of course, is going to drive trade spending, efficiency, accrual accuracy. But more importantly, one of the key aspects that a lot of people don't think of from a revenue growth management standpoint, specifically, when it comes to how can I be more accurate? And really the biggest driving component ultimately is the forecast accuracy. If I can predict my volume, if I can predict what that's going to be, it's going to drive downstream. Am I buying just enough raw materials? Am I getting just enough truck? Am I preventing any out of stocks? Am I preventing any sort of impact that I can deliver? Am I overproducing? Do I have too much product on hand that I'm going to have to sell it out due to its closed code, or it's going to waste? So it helps drive that from an efficiency standpoint. Again, ultimately the revenue growth management. So a lot covered. I kind of went a little fast there, but again, not the most exciting topic. But the key takeaway here is to, as an organization, evaluating the key areas in the processes, specifically as it relates to my trade marketing funding and trade planning, and really driving my overall revenue growth and how that can be impacted downstream. It's evaluating to say, hey, is there an opportunity here for me to introduce or to digitalize an existing technology, an existing process, or refine a better business process? So with that, we'll take some questions.
Okay, Joel, thank you very much. We've got a bunch of questions that came in here. The first one, for trade promotion optimization, how do you exclude factors like supply chain disruption, COVID disruption, customer preference changes, etc., to see which spend combo is most effective?
So typically what I've seen from a data science perspective is you can eliminate certain aspects or assign a percentage to say, okay, I want to smooth, that's from a data science term, kind of smooth out that area where there was a supply chain. So I may have a huge dip in something. In my modeling, I want to kind of smooth that or bring back more of an average, because these supply chain disruptions are skewing the data. So from that perspective, the smoothing, I need to identify the key areas where there was a disruption, what it was it raw material, but more importantly, the time frame. So when I go into my historical data, I've either eliminated that or smoothed it with some sort of an average to make the predictive models a little bit more palatable from that perspective. Okay?
Okay. Next question. What areas which may not be fully digitized provide the quickest implementation value?
From my experience, the first area is really the annual planning process. That has the biggest bang for the buck. But ultimately, the back-end settlement process is less impactful to the overall organization. So from that perspective, a quick big bang for the buck is that back-end settlement process, the validation process, and the reconciliation typically provides the clients, when they first digitalize this, the biggest aha moment. The biggest aha moment is typically found money.
Okay. Here's an interesting question that came in. Which area in the organization should be driving this transformation?
Oh, that is an interesting question. Well, in regards to revenue growth management, everybody should be driving this, that's for sure. But ultimately, it's tough to say what area should be driving it. It's because the trade typically belongs in the sales organization. They should be the champion of it, but they should definitely be gaining support from the finance group, and ultimately all the way down through procurement and through the supply chain group. So who champions it? Who typically sales, but the entire organization should be really pushing for this.
Okay, next question. How difficult is it to build a business case for updating a process? What do you focus on, net revenue, margin, or what?
Building a business case, that is difficult. What I advise clients to do is net revenue, because when you think about efficiency, and let's talk particularly from a trade planning standpoint, I want to first evaluate how I can be more efficient with my spending. So when I tell them to build a business case, by analyzing this particular process, is it going to provide me a better efficiency to where I can reinvest money or reinvest time to drive growth within the existing budget? So I always tell folks to focus on the net aspect of it when evaluating and building the business case, and provide not only a first year, but the process should provide a year-over-year impact to net revenue. So.
Okay, the last question then, Joel, is can this type of digital automation be solved with a gap fill provider?
Oh, that's a good question. And there are a lot of, first off, yes. It's from a quick impact to driver, it's a lot easier to implement a gap fill software application in the key area. That way I'm not impacting an entire enterprise platform. There are a lot of gap software providers out there, which allows manufacturers to quickly implement, bolt on, engage with, turn on, and so forth, a key area which needs digitalization. And what I've found is there's a lot of customers out there who may have a solution that they're using for one area, i.e., let's say execution, and they don't realize, they don't understand, or they don't want to understand or haven't looked at the fact that their current application could expand to fill that undigitized gap.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's all the questions that came in. I want to thank you, Joel, for a great presentation. As always, Joel is a veteran speaker at the Lead Marketing Conference. Anybody who wants to follow up with Joel can contact him directly by email at joel.cartwright@vistex.com. Joel, thank you again.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the time.